The history of Colorado and the history of agriculture do go hand in hand. People have been farming in Colorado for hundreds, if not thousands, of years.
Ranching has to be in your blood. Farming has to be in your blood.
Centennial Farm is a designation of the family working that same land, that same area for 100 years.
It shows the progression of agriculture from the early 1800s to the present.
When we lose contact with our origins and our origins become an abstraction, we have been mentally damaged.
It's not an easy life, but it's extremely rewarding.
Sugar beets were quite simply the crop that saved Colorado after the collapse of the silver economy. The legend goes that Charles Beottcher, who was a Leadville hardware store owner, traveled on vacation to Germany with his wife and met with German farmers who were growing sugar beets. The story goes he took one of his suitcases and emptied out all the clothes and filled it with sugar beet seed, which he brought back to Colorado.
He found out they grew very well and they produced very good sugar.
Some of the gold and silver money from the Denver area was invested in the sugar beet industry, so they did build factories. One of the first ones in northern Colorado was the Loveland factory in 1903, and then Fort Collins had a factory in 1905, so we started raising sugar beets.
The sugar beet grows a tuber root in the ground, and that's what you're after, is that root. And they would harvest the beet, pull it up and get that root and chop it up and boil it and make a molasses, and they would get the sugar crystals out of that process.
We've raised sugar beets for 100 years, and it's been the main cash crop for the farm.
And sugar became the major cash crop in Colorado between 1890 and the 1960s.
And it was a family affair. All the family members went out to harvest the sugar beets. It was all done by hand.
Labor was the biggest issue in sugar. The Great Western Sugar Plant had recruiting agencies on the Texas-Mexico border. They sent recruiters overseas to Europe to bring in laborers to work in Colorado beet fields.
At first it was the German-Russian people that migrated to America. They came and worked in the sugar beet fields. They were very industrious and they saved their money and soon owned their own farms.
The Japanese came and worked in the beet fields, and in time Mexicans came up from Central America and worked in the beet fields.
During World War II, there was a prisoner of war camp in Windsor, and the prisoners would come work in the sugar beet fields during that time. My dad had a brother that was over in England fighting in the war, so I'm sure there must have been a lot of mixed feelings with having the prisoners here.
In the 1920s, there were a lot of sheep pastured up in the high mountain meadows. They would herd those down to the railroad and ship them back east. One winter they got stuck here because the train couldn't transport them because of the blizzard. They had to figure out how to feed these sheep. They found out that the sheep loved sugar beet tops. The leaves and everything that they cut off and they just left on the ground, the sheep loved them. So the sheep industry started.
There were so many sheep fed in the Fort Collins area that it was known as the lamb feeding capital of the world.